But let's get into the Word, because as much as I love talking about myself, which actually not so much, I love talking about Jesus so much more. So tonight we are going to be in John chapter 11. I know I did John 13 last week. I was going to do 14 this week, but then as I was praying about it, that's not where God led me. So John chapter 11, if you can't find it, it's right after John 10, right before John 12, on page 1389. Now, once you get there, stick a finger in their bookmark bulletin, someone else's finger, whatever, and then go back a few pages to Luke chapter 10. We're going to start talking about John 11 by talking about Luke 10, because we can. Luke chapter 10, that's going to be starting in verse 38, which comes right after 37 on page 1341. If you just flip 2/3, 3/4 way through your Bible, you'll see Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. We'll start in Luke 10, and then we'll go to John 11. The reason why we're jumping around like that is because I want to focus on this family. Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. They're all siblings. And they invite Jesus into their home. I don't know how Jesus met Mary and Martha. I have a theory, but I searched all day and I couldn't prove it. So I'm not going to prove it. So, but I have a theory on how he met Mary first, and then he gets invited home, and then Martha serves it. But let's read this passage first, and then I'll talk about it. Verses 38 through the end of the chapter. Now it happened as they went that he entered a certain village. A certain village. He's not going to tell us which one. It's Bethany. But anyway, a certain village, and a certain woman named Martha welcomed him into her house. And she had a sister called Mary, who also sat at Jesus' feet and heard his word. But Martha was distracted with much serving. And she approached him and said, Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to serve alone? Therefore tell her to help me. And Jesus answered and said to her, Martha, Martha, you are worried and troubled about many things, but one thing is needed, and Mary has chosen the good part, which will not be taken away from her. Okay, so we see two sisters here. Lazarus is not mentioned. We'll get to him later. Mary and Martha. You guys have heard this story before. Which one are you? Raise your hand if you're Martha. Really? That's it? Raise your hand if you're Mary. A lot more Marys. Okay, some of you guys don't know who you are. So let me talk about Mary and Martha. They're sisters. One of them is like, I'm the host. I'm going to work. I'm going to serve. I'm going to do all of these things. These are good things that have to be done around the house so that Jesus can be here. And then Jesus comes in. He starts teaching. Martha's working in the kitchen. Mary's just sitting at Jesus' feet listening to his words. Martha's work is like, I've got all this work to do, and my sister's just sitting there. I would love to sit at Jesus' feet. I would love to listen to him, but the dishes have to be done. Someone's got to microwave the burrito again. It's still frozen, and we got to get this stuff out on the table. I'm just kidding about the burrito. I don't think they actually had one. In case anyone was like, I don't remember seeing burrito in the story. And so it's just like, who are you? Are you a Mary or are you a Martha? I personally, I'm a Martha. I'm all about let's get stuff done. When we have people come over to our house, it actually, my wife and I kind of switch off on this one. It kind of depends who invited them. If I invite people, man, I'm doing all the stuff. I'm doing the cooking, I'm doing the cleaning. So my wife could be the Mary, so she could sit and talk to the people and enjoy conversation, enjoy the fellowship where I'm trying to get everything done. You know, and I'm thinking if I don't do everything, she won't let me invite anybody over anymore. And when she's invited somebody over, when it was her idea to have people over, then she's got all that stuff to do, and I help her out, but I get kind of distracted just talking to the people sometimes because it wasn't my plan and all that stuff. But the problem with being a Martha is we're always looking at the stuff that needs to be done. And we're not necessarily looking at the people that we're trying to serve. We measure our productivity based on stuff. We feel good about the end of our day by what we got done. Do you ever lie in bed at night thinking, oh man, I got so much done, and think about all the stuff you got done, and then you feel good about your day? Or you don't feel good about your day because you had so many things that you wanted to get done, but you didn't quite get to for one reason or another. You guys do that when you're about to go to sleep? I used to do that. Then you know what happened? I got kids. I'm so tired that night. I can't think of anything. I lie down. It's like, 12, 1, 2 in the morning or whatever. And it's just like, I'm asleep. After putting the kids to bed and then hanging out and spending time with my wife, which is really precious. I don't want to pass that up. And then I put her to bed. And then I get up and I study and I work, and I do that until I finish with whatever I had on my list to do that day, because I planned stuff out and I want to try and do that because I'm a Martha type of person. And there's nothing wrong with being a Martha type of person. It's just when you get a little too Martha, right? When you're like doing your job and you are serving the Lord, and then you look around and it's like, how come Mary's not serving the Lord like I am? She's not working nearly as hard as I am serving the Lord. She needs to get in here and help me. That's a little too Martha, right? And then Mary's, she's sitting at Jesus' feet. Can you imagine? Like, they're sisters. I never had sisters, but I have brothers. Can you imagine? Like, now they're talking, they're complaining about each other in front of Jesus. Jesus, tell Mary to help me. Mary's like, Martha, 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 right? Like, I'm where I want to be. I don't want to do that stuff. I want to be here. I'm guessing Martha's the older one. I'm just guessing because the older ones usually want to try to get everything done. Anybody else who's the firstborn? Yeah, just a couple, right? Do you try to get everything done? And like your little siblings, because you grew up with siblings, and they're like, they can't work as hard as you because they're younger. They get distracted easily by other things. You're focused. And I noticed that in my firstborn. I've got 4 boys. The youngest one's a baby. He doesn't really, he counts as a boy, but it's not like I can see his work ethic or how he interacts with the other ones yet. He just smiles and poops. That's all he does. And so, but the older one, he's 9 years old. I see his focus. He's really focused. I can count on him to get a job done most of the time. Just about every time I can tell him a job, walk away, and while I'm working on whatever I'm working on, he's getting the job done. And my wife's like, why don't you do it with him? It's like, because we can get more done if we're doing 2 different things. It's like, but you're missing the relationship. But we're getting stuff done. First, I'm a firstborn. My wife is a thirdborn. Completely different mentality, right? She's a Mary. She's in the moment all the time. And that's number 2 for me. My second son, Asher, he is in the moment. I don't know what he's thinking. The first one, I know exactly what he's thinking just about all of the time. My wife will say something, and he'll get this look on his face, and she's like, what? And I can say, he's upset because you said this, and that means he doesn't get to do the plan that he made. Because he's thinking like me. He's got a plan already, what he's going to do with this time and what he's going to do first, second, third, and fourth. And when my wife tells him to do something, it throws a wrench in his plans, and then he's upset. And I'm not saying that he should be upset or that he should obviously obey his mom, but like I know why he's upset. Asher, I don't know what he's thinking most of the time. Sometimes I wonder if he's thinking, because he's a feeler. If my wife is having a bad day, I won't notice. I'll try to notice, but I don't. Like if I'm having a conversation with her, like if I need information from her or I need her to do something and she's having a bad day, then I'll notice because it hinders productivity, right? And it's not like it's all about productivity, but that's what my mind focuses on, so that's when I notice. Isaac's the same way. He won't notice my wife having a bad day either. Asher will. I don't know how he does it. He just feels the vibe in the room or something, and he just goes and gives her a hug. And he does love the work, but he gets distracted pretty easily. The last 2 mornings, though, he made my wife breakfast in bed, which is great. He wakes up early, goes to the kitchen, makes breakfast he made it for everybody in the family, and brought it to her. I was impressed. I'm bragging him just a little bit. I like to say it was, because I taught him so well, but it's not. It's not. I've got a routine in the morning. That is so not my routine. And I'm fine with that. I'm not mad at him for breaking the routine. It's just but I'm thinking that's not the way I do things. But he does it because he loves her. He will just break out and just tell one of us, I love you. And then he's teaching his little brother Oliver, number 3, to do that too. Oliver will just say, I love you now. And he'll go up and he'll hug or whatever, and he'll be cuddly. The first one doesn't ever say I love you unless we say it first and it's just a response, right? And he never initiates a hug. which is actually a lot like me. If you talk to my wife, she will tell you that she taught me how to hug. Because, I don't think she actually taught me how to do it, but it's just we never did it growing up. My family was very not touchy-feely. Both my parents and all my brothers, like none of us hugged growing up. It just wasn't a thing. None of us said I love you growing up. We always loved each other. We knew we did. It just wasn't expressed, right? It's just one of those kinds of families. My mom's from Hong Kong, and the Chinese are very reserved. And my dad's from Scotland. They're also very reserved. And so it's just a very reserved household, and no one's like showing any feelings. And my wife is the opposite. So her feelings all the time. I try to make a plan for the day, and she's like, I don't know. It's like, well, can we plan on doing this? It's like, well, I don't know how I'll feel about that when the time comes. I don't want to make a decision now and have to stick to it if I don't feel like it later. It's like, that's what plans are. We go on a trip. I packed my stuff into like a little backpack. Okay, I'm ready to go. She brings like everything. And it's like, but why? She's like, because I don't know how I'm going to feel when I get dressed. It's like, getting dressed is based on feelings? For me, it's just whatever t-shirt's on top of the pile. Then I move to the next bin, whatever pants are on top of the pile. I'm done. That's it. But for her, she's like, no, I don't feel like wearing this, don't feel like wearing that, don't feel like wearing this. I don't know how feelings and clothes are connected. But she's a Mary. I'm a Martha. It's hard. And it's been a challenge for me over the past 11 years that we've been married to not get too Martha on her. I have to realize she's different than me, and that's great. Because if I married someone who was exactly like me, one, everything would get done. But there'd be no hugging, there'd be no I love yous. Everything would be on a regimented schedule, not because we have to stick to the schedule, just because we find something that works and we just do it. And there'd be a lot less fun in our household because of that, just because of personalities. We need Marys, we need Marthas, because if everybody was married, nothing would get done. But Martha's like, Jesus, tell Mary to help me. He says, Martha, Martha, you're worried and troubled about many things. But one thing is needed, and Mary has chosen the good part, and that will not be taken away from her. What did she choose? She chose to be with Jesus. She chose not to be a servant at that time, but she chose to be family. And that's the thing. She and Martha are family. And Lazarus, their brother, which we'll get to in a minute, they're family. And they've welcomed Jesus into their family. And as we get to John 11, and you can turn there while I'm talking. As we get to John chapter 11, it'll say talks about how much Jesus loved them. He just loved them. They're his family, even though they're not really his family. And I was talking to Janelle out in the hallway earlier about church and how church is our family. And it is. I mean, you weren't born this, but do you get to choose your Christian brothers and sisters? No, you don't. They're just the weirdos sitting next to you. Right? That's all we are. Just a bunch of weirdos who love Jesus together. Are we alike? No, we've got some Marys, we got some Marthas, we got a bunch of people who don't know if they're Mary or Martha, and that's okay. But we're family. The thing with church is we think we could just come, sit down, listen to this message, go, that was pretty good, and then go home. But then we're not participating as a family. How many people do you know in this room? How many people do you know and can call by their first names? How many people in this room do you see outside of these purple walls? We're family. We got to act like family and talk like family. At least talk like the family that we like, right? Because there's some families that are estranged, like, oh yeah, I don't talk to my parents, I don't talk to my siblings or whatever. And then they're split apart and they're trying to do everything on their own. That's not the way God has us. God doesn't want us to be on our own. God doesn't want us to walk with him on our own. He wants us to walk with him together. That's why we gather together in the building. We could do church online and just do video church, right? But we do that. But that's because we know everybody can't make it here all the time. Sometimes people are sick, so it's good to have a place for them to watch online. But when they're well, we want them to come here so they can be a part of the family. Because you have needs. And there are people in this family who can help you with those needs. And there are people in this family that need you, and you can help them. You're like, well, I can't help them with anything because I'm horrible at everything. I can't fix anything. I can't make anything. I can't whatever. Can you listen? No, I can't do that either. They're like, listen to your family. Sometimes people just need to talk. And as a pastor, like, our time gets eaten up pretty quick. We got stuff to do and studying to do. That's why I stay up so late studying, because my days get filled with other stuff, which are great stuff. I love it. And my church there is like maybe 30 people. I know everybody's name because it's just 30 people. Here, there's a lot of people at this church. It'd be really hard for Pastor Sam to know each of you individually. That's why you guys got to know each other. Talk to each other. Someone's got problems. Do you have the answer? Maybe, maybe not. If you don't have the answer, you can listen. And when you have a problem, don't you just want someone to listen? They don't have to know the answer. You just have to be able to talk to them about it. So that you don't feel alone. That's the thing. You're not alone. The enemy wants us to feel alone. First, we go from extended families living together to nuclear families where it's just mom, dad, and the kids, and then grandparents are off in other cities. When I was 18, I moved out of the house. One, because I was going to college, and two, because that's what you do when you move when you graduate, right? That's what you do when you turn 18. You move out and try to start life on your own. My dad moved to another country. He's from Scotland. He moved here to start life here when he was old enough and could do it. And I'm thinking, well, that's just what I got to do. I don't have to go to another country. I just went to another city and started living on my own. And for a while, it's fun. But you know what? Once I got married and started having kids, I wish I lived closer to my parents. Not because I was like, oh no, I need the help. Because my wife's parents are nearby. We get a lot of help from her side of the family. But because I want the joy of my mom spending time with my kids. She loves my kids. My dad tolerates them okay. My mom loves them. And I love seeing her love them, both from her side, because she's always wanted grandchildren, and from their side, who just get loved on by her. And so I didn't understand how important that was till I started having kids, just having that family around. And as I got more and more involved in my church in Orville, it's one of the most loving churches I've ever known. Everybody knows everybody's business, and we love each other. And it's just like there's no condemnation, there's no judgment. It's just people loving each other, and everybody knows each other. So after service, they just hang out in that new fellowship hall, the newly decorated fellowship hall, and spend time there. And after a while, I'm like, I'm hungry. I go get something to eat. You guys have fun. I'll see you later. And I get notification they didn't lock up till like 2 o'clock or something because everyone's just hanging out. It's like, that's great. And I'm hearing conversations of, my car is broken. And then somebody in our fellowship is a mechanic, so he'll go over and fix their car. It's like, I need this done or whatever. And so somebody else will go fix that or help that. And whenever I'm working on a project, I'm like, man, I could use this. I could use some muscles here. I'll call somebody up at church. I know who's retired, but he's stronger than me, so he'll come over and help me out. And the reason is we all know each other. We know each other's strengths. We know each other's weaknesses. We even know each other's availability, so we can call each other and say, hey, you want to do this? And like, yeah, let's do it. Because we're a family. And this church is your family. If you said, this is my home church, this is my home family. And so, treat each other that way. Talk to each other. Get each other's names and phone numbers and figure out when you can hang out and figure out life together. And that's it. Because of what we're doing at our church, the house across the street opened up. There was a family at our church with a son the same age as our third son. They bought the house, and it came with 2 houses, so they rented out to somebody else in church. So we got like a whole little compound on our street where the kids all get to run around together and play, which is so much fun. And we're like, okay, we're going out on a date night or whatever. It's like, hey, can you come watch our kids for tonight? And like, oh yeah, we'll come over. And like, oh, we're doing something. Can we send our kid over to your house? Like, yeah, send them on over. And we could just do that for each other because we're family. And it's because we all love Jesus, but it's not just because we all love Jesus. It's because we all love Jesus together. And that's it. So Mary, Martha, and Lazarus are family, and they consider Jesus part of their family. So when Lazarus gets sick, they call him. They send someone to get him. They can't just text him, right? So chapter 11 in John, in the book of John, verse 1. Now a certain man was sick, Lazarus of Bethany, the town of Mary and her sister Martha. It was that Mary who anointed the Lord with fragrant oil and wiped his feet with her hair, whose brother Lazarus was sick. So that's like a little John's like, hey, you guys know that Mary who wiped his feet with his hair? It's her brother. That's the one. And so we'll actually see the hair wiping thing in chapter 12 if we get that far. But anyway, therefore the sisters sent to him saying, look, behold, he whom you love is sick. Not my brother is sick. It's like the one you love is sick. You and Lazarus go way back. You guys love each other. You guys are good friends. He's sick. Okay, that's it. Not can you come help him. Just he's sick. So they want him to come help him, right? It's kind of implied, come quick because he's sick. But they don't say, they just say he's sick. And when Jesus heard that, he said, this sickness is not unto death, but for the glory of God, that the Son of God may be glorified through it. Lazarus' sickness and death that we're going to read about was divinely appointed by the Lord. It was God's plan that Lazarus would get sick and die for the purpose of Jesus raising him again. Like, I think that's pretty cool. And we'll get to the whys more as we go through it. Now, Jesus loved Martha and her sister and Lazarus, so when he heard that he was sick, he stayed 2 more days in the place where he was. Like, that's not what you really think of when you say, oh, he loved them, they were sick, so he just stuck around where he was for 2 more days. Just 1 more weekend. That's all it was. Like, we're like, well, go. Why aren't you going? Because it's the plan. God's got a plan. Then after he said to his disciples, let's go to Judea again. The disciples said to him, Rabbi, lately the Jews sought to stone you, and you're going there again? So now we get a little more into the situation, right? He's like, all right, it's time to go to Judea. Judea is the area where Jerusalem is. Bethany's just across the little valley there on the hill. And he's like, let's go. And his disciples are like, wait, you're a wanted man there. Last time we were there, they were trying to stone you because you were claiming you're God. I mean, he is, but they wanted to stone him for that. And so it's like, you want to go there? It's kind of dangerous for you. So I'm thinking the disciples like, okay, Jesus is not going to go see Lazarus because 1, Jesus said he's not going to die from this. And 2, he might get stoned if he goes. So he's playing it safe, right? Yeah, when does Jesus play it safe? Jesus answered, are there not 12 hours in the day? If anyone walks in a day, he does not stumble because he sees the light of the world. But if one walks in the night, he stumbles because the light is not in him. She's like, I know what I'm doing. For me, it's daytime. I see where I'm going. Trust me in this. And these things he said, and after he said to him, but our friend Lazarus sleeps, and I go that I may wake him up. Now they're confused. Because then his disciples said in verse 12, Lord, if he sleeps, then he'll get well. He's like, well, okay, good. He's sleeping. He's resting. Don't wake him up. He needs his rest. However, Jesus spoke of his death. They thought that he was speaking about taking a rest and sleep. Jesus knows what's going on. Even though he's nowhere near, I don't know where he is, but he's a ways away, right? He knows that Lazarus died, and he says, I'm going to go wake him up. They don't get it. But so, because they don't get it, Jesus says plainly, Lazarus is dead. And I am glad for your sakes that I was not there, that you may believe. Nevertheless, let us go to him. Like, what is Jesus talking about? I mean, we know it. It makes sense to us. But for them, they must have been really confused. Wait, you just said Lazarus was not going to die from this. Then you said that he's sleeping and you have to go wake him up, which we're like, good, if he's sleeping, he needs the rest. And now you're saying he's dead and you're glad that you weren't there? Like, what's going on? Jesus like, it's the plan. I got the plan. I'm walking in the light. I know what I'm doing. You guys ever think Jesus doesn't know what he's doing? Jesus always knows what he's doing. But that's one of our problems, right? We think, oh man, I don't think God knows what he's doing in my life. You know how I know we think that? Because we worry about stuff. What are you worried about? You worried because you think God doesn't know what's going on? Of course God knows what's going on. You don't know what's going on, but God knows. Do you trust him? If you trust God, you won't worry. If you trust God, you won't worry. Which means if you are worried about something, anything, you're not trusting God. I remember when I was not yet a Christian. I was going to this Bible study because I got invited by some people in my dorm, and I didn't have anything else to do, and I was curious about the Bible, so I go, and the first passage we get to is in Matthew where it says, do not worry. And I'm like, it makes sense not to worry, because their reason was because God, it takes care of everything, and my thought was, it doesn't do any good anyway. But their reason's a whole lot better. I like it because God takes care of everything. And then guess what I did after that? I worried about stuff. And I would try to play it off, right? Like, I'm not really worried. I'm just anxious. And then you get to the Bible passage that says, do not be anxious about anything. It's like, oh, I can't even be anxious now. Not that I really wanted to be anxious. I just wanted to be justified in how I was feeling. Have you guys ever done that too? Like, you're feeling bad, and you know you shouldn't be feeling bad, but you're feeling bad anyways. But instead of trying to feel better by trusting in the Lord, you're just trying to say, well, why you deserve to feel bad. Why life is so miserable that Jesus dying on the cross for your sins is shadowed by this mountain of misery in your life. It's like, it's not. How many of you, when you die, are going to go to hell? Anybody? No? I hope not. Okay? I get to go to heaven, not because of what I've done, but because of what Jesus has done. That means no matter what happens in this life, even if it kills me, is not big enough to get me removed from heaven. The worst thing you could think of something happening in your life is it killing you, and then you get to go to heaven anyway. It's like, well, what if it hurts or kills my loved one? Do they know Jesus? If they do, they get to go to heaven. And then they are in a better place than this earth. This earth is pretty gross. I really don't like being here some of the time. But I know that God's got a job for me here, so as long as I'm here, I want to do his job. I want to do his work. So that when I get home, when I get to heaven, I can say, good, I did everything God wanted me to do. Because I'm a Martha. I think, like, just get it checked off the list. Let's do it. But I want to hear God say, well done, good and faithful servant. And I know I'm not that good of a servant. I don't do things the way he wants, not on purpose, but because I'm not good at stuff. He asked me to do things that I just can't do on my own. So I try and I fail and I have to go, okay, God, I messed up. How do you want me to do this? Because I didn't think of asking that in the first place. I was like, oh, no, I got this. I know how to do this. And then I don't. So I got to ask God, how did you want me to do this again? It's kind of like, okay, I got a job for you. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to go do the job. What was the job you wanted me to do? Okay, got it. How do I do that? I don't know. But I want to go. I'm so excited to go do stuff for Jesus that I don't always remember to think, maybe God's got instructions for how to get it done. You know? There's probably a YouTube video for how to walk with Christ, but it's not the same as what God's going to tell you. So listen to him. God knows. He is in charge. And yes, what he tells you is going to be confusing. You know why? Because he knows what's going on and you're trying to figure it out. But you know what? If you're faithful to follow, he is faithful to lead. And you will see. Then Thomas, who was called the twin, said to his fellow disciples, "Let us go that we may die with him." Like, that's kind of dramatic, isn't it, Thomas? I mean, it's just like, okay, we're going back to Judea. They're going to try and stone Jesus. Like, let's go and we'll die with him. It's like, how about we just go and like help Lazarus or something, like Jesus said? I don't know. So when Jesus came, verse 17, he found that he had already been in the tomb 4 days. Lazarus had been dead 4 days, right? In that culture, as soon as you died, you had to go in the tomb before the sun went down. That was the rule. So they buried people the same day. Jesus missed it all. He's been in the tomb 4 days already. Now Bethany was near Jerusalem, about 2 miles away, and many of the Jews had joined the women around Martha and Mary to comfort them concerning their brother. That makes sense? Everybody comes by to help out the family. Now Martha, as soon as she heard that Jesus was coming, went and met him, but Mary was sitting in the house. Martha said to Jesus, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother would not have died. But even now, I know that whatever you ask of God, God will give you." What's she asking of him? Nothing. She's afraid to ask, isn't she? I think she's afraid to hope. Jesus is like, hey, if you were here, he would not have died. She believed in his healing power. She knew 2 things about Jesus. One, that he was powerful enough to do anything. And 2, that he loved her enough to do stuff. Right? That's why that we as Christians don't have to be afraid or worried or anxious or any other synonym that you could think of that goes with that. We don't have to be any of those things because we have those 2 truths in our hearts. Whatever your problem is God bigger than it? Yes, he is. Does God love you enough to do something about it? Yes, he does. So you can sit and you can trust and you can be at peace because you know those 2 things. Whatever the problem is, God's bigger than it, and he can do something through it. And even if it seems like he doesn't, he does. Because God says that he makes us perfect. He perfects us through trials in our lives, through the testing of our faith. It's in James chapter 1. Read it yourself. The testing of our faith produces patience, and patience must have its perfect work so that we can be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. And it says in Philippians that Jesus will work in us until we are completed. Jesus is doing the work inside of us, and that means trials. That means hard times for us. But those hard times make us better. This is a hard time for Martha. She trusts Jesus. She doesn't understand. It's like, whatever you say, yeah, I believe God's going to do it. You could just tell her, just see her holding that next thought in, like, bring him back, bring him back, bring him back. Jesus said to her, your brother will rise again. He just tells her he's going to be fine. Martha said to him, I know that he will rise again in the resurrection in the last day. It's like, okay, I know at the end of times we all get new bodies, which is cool that she knew that. That means that's what Jesus was teaching about the resurrection. We don't always teach that stuff here in the church. I mean, we do because we go through the Bible here, but the church in general doesn't always teach that. But she's like, I know, like he'll get resurrected later. I understand that. And she's like, no, that's not what I'm talking about. She said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. And he who believes in me, though he may die, he shall live. And whoever lives and believes in me shall never die. Do you believe this? Yeah, that's a pretty cool claim, though, isn't it? I mean, we know he's the resurrection life, but that he claims that if we believe in him, even though we'll die, we'll still be alive. And then whoever lives and believes shall never die. I'm looking forward to that, aren't you? But aren't you glad that we get to not live forever in these bodies? You know, when we're 20 years old, it's like these bodies aren't so bad. But the older we get, it's like, well, that stopped working. You know, it's like, okay, that doesn't work so great anymore or whatever. And it's just like things slow down, things stop working as well. And you're like, let's go. I don't want this one anymore. This one's done. Right? Just like you get a new car. This car is great. I'll keep this car forever. Then, 20 years down the road, half the stuff's broken. And you're like, nah, I'm ready for a new one now. Right? That's what it's like. Then she said to him, yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God who is to come into the world. She proclaims that he is the Christ. Have you proclaimed that Jesus is the Christ? The Christ means the anointed one. The one that God said, this is the one I'm going to do my work through. Yes, that's Jesus. He is your God. Is he your Lord? Do you trust him? There's a thing about faith, and we're going to see it in a minute. And when she had said these things, she went her way and secretly called Mary, her sister, saying, the teacher has come and is calling for you. And as soon as she heard that, she arose quickly and came out to him. Now, Jesus had not yet come into the town. Remember, he was in Jerusalem. He's got the 2 miles to go. But was in the place where Martha met him, which doesn't say where it is. My guess is maybe the Garden of Gethsemane. It's in the right area, and he did like to hang out there because Judas knew that he always hung out there. That's why he brought the guys there. So maybe he was hanging out there waiting for the right time. Just as a little rabbit trail, when my wife and I got married, this is another thing, Mary Martha thing, right? We got married, beautiful ceremony at someone's property. I don't even remember their names because they were friends of a friend, and there was a nice lake behind us and stuff. And so he says, I do. You may kiss the bride, did all that, turned around, and I'm standing there, and I'm waiting. And she's like, let's go. And I'm like, no, we're waiting. And she says, what for? And it's like the right time. Because my dad had hired a bagpiper, and he starts playing, and he comes out, and we kind of follow him out. And that was the plan. She forgot about the plan. She's married. She's living in the moment. I'm checking things off a list in my head. Did that. It's just the way my brain works. I'm enjoying it. It's not like I'm not enjoying it because I think this way. I am enjoying it. And I just, that's the way it works. And so same type of thing. Jesus is hanging out. He's waiting for the right time. Anytime where I can say, I'm like Jesus, I'm going to point it out. Just saying. Then Mary came to where Jesus was, I'm in verse 32, and saw him, and she fell down at his feet. No, did I skip a verse? I did. What verse am I in? 31. Then the Jews who were with her in the house and comforting her, when they saw Mary, rose up quickly and went out, followed her, saying, she's going to the tomb to weep there. She didn't say, hey, I'm going to go meet Jesus. She just got up and left. And like, oh, I guess she's going to the tomb. She's going to weep there. When Mary came to where Jesus was, she saw him and she fell down at his feet, saying to him, Lord, if you had been there, my brother would not have died. Same thing as Martha said. If you were here, everything would have been okay. You guys ever feel like that with God? You guys ever accuse God of that? God, if you were here, if you were doing stuff, everything would be fine, but you weren't here. It's just like, if someone says that and they're sitting next to me, I think I'd give them a little more space. Right? Just in case. I don't know. I probably shouldn't because I have faith that God's a good shot. That I'm not going to be in trouble because I didn't say it. I mean, he's not going to miss. But anyway, don't you love that God is so merciful, even that when we accuse him of doing stuff, he's just like, it's fine. Just relax. Therefore, when Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews came with her weeping, he groaned in the spirit and was troubled and said, where have you laid him? Where'd you put him? Then they turned and say, Lord, come and see. Now they use on him. Did you see what they did? They said, come and see. That's what Jesus said earlier. They're like, hey, Jesus, where are you staying tonight? Come and see. Now they're using on Jesus, come and see. So Jesus goes with them. Verse 35. Jesus wept. I was in the lobby with my sons earlier, waiting before I got here early. And I was like, okay, what Bible verse do you know? Think of a Bible verse, and any one you want. And my 9-year-old, Jesus wept. I am not impressed that you can remember 2 words. But he did. Jesus wept. And the thing is, like, that does deserve to have its own verse all by itself because it is such a powerful statement. He wept. Why did he weep? He loved Lazarus. He was planning. He already said he's going to wake him up. He's going to raise him from the dead. So he's temporary dead. Somehow. Temporary dead. And Jesus is still crying over him. Jesus connects with Mary and Martha. They've been weeping for 4 days. They've been weeping. And that sadness. Jesus, this is how I'm not like Jesus. Jesus is an emotional guy. He had emotions. My wife likes to say I am not emotionally ignorant. What's that word when you can't read something? Illiterate. That's what she calls me, emotionally illiterate. No clue. And I would be insulted if it wasn't true, but it is. So if you come up here and you're like, he doesn't even know I'm sad, I probably don't know you're sad. If you're actually crying, yeah, I probably figured it out. But it takes me a while. But anyway, so Jesus is not like that. He is crying with them. Jesus wept. And the Jews said, see how he loved them? And some said, could not this man who opened the eyes of the blind also kept this man from... Now the Jews are blaming him. If you were here, he wouldn't have died. They probably had a t-shirt made. If you were here, he wouldn't have died. Then Jesus, again, groaning in himself. He's still sad. He's groaning in himself. He's so bad. Have you ever heard someone groan because of how sad they were? It's such a deep and sad sound. Jesus is doing that now. Because of this man whom he loved had died. He came to the tomb. It was a cave, and the stone lay against it. And Jesus said, take away the stone. Man, we're going to see some faith here. Because you can say, oh yeah, I believe Jesus is going to raise Lazarus from the dead. You know how you know you believe? When you roll away the stone. Faith and actions go together. If you have faith and no actions, you don't have faith. It's the head exercise. Do you believe that God is God? Yeah, I know God exists. He made stuff and everything. Do you live like it? Do your actions prove your faith? If I told you what the lotto number, do we still have lottery in God? I don't know. I don't pay attention. But if I just had the lottery numbers, I'm like, God gave me the lottery numbers, and I'm so generous, I'm going to share it with you so we can all split the winnings, right? Okay? If you had faith, you go buy a ticket. If you're like, oh yeah, I believe he knows the lottery numbers, sure, it's right. God told him, yeah, I believe God talks to him, and you don't buy a ticket, then it's like you don't have faith in it. It's a head exercise. I don't actually have the lotto numbers. Just in case you were excited for a second, I don't got them. God's not telling me. I've never won the lottery because I never play. Yeah, so anyway, don't think I'm giving you lotto numbers. But the idea is faith has to have action. It does. Because you believe, that causes you to do. Which, conversely, thinking about it the other way, if you look at the things that you do, that will show you what you have faith in. If you look at the things that you do, it will show you what you have faith in. What do? Do you get all the security stuff, like cameras and guns and stuff? Well, that shows that you have faith in your ability to protect your family. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't get that stuff. If that's what God leads you to do, fine, do it. I'm not saying anything is wrong. I'm just saying where you spend your money, where you spend your time, where you spend your energy will show you who your God is. Are you spending your money, time, and energy on the Lord, or are you spending on something else? Anything else. Even if it's a good thing, it's not if it's not God. Where's your money going? That's probably the easiest to figure out, right? Because you can just look at your bank account statement and go, oh yeah, food, that's mine. Food, more food. That was a good meal. Food, you know. Where's your energy going? Your time going? Time's the next one to figure out, because you could just like, okay, what did I do today? And then just like list out the hours and write down what you did. If people say that they have problems with their walk with the Lord, that's one of the things I tell them to do. Get a piece of paper, write down, half hour increments from when you wake up to when you go to sleep, and write down what you did that day. And you'll see where your time goes. Then you'll see what's important to you. What's your God? Energy is the hardest one to figure out. But you can do it if you think about it. Where did I spend most of my energy today? Why am I tired this evening? Because I did this today. What's so important about that? Is it the Lord? Is it God? take away the stone. Martha, the sister of him who was dead, said to him, Lord, by this time there's a stench, for he's been dead 4 days. I like the old King James version of this verse. By now he stinketh. I think we need to bring stinketh back, right? And and there are some people who stinketh even though they haven't been dead at all. But that's a whole different story. Verse 40, Jesus said to her, did I not say to you that if you would believe, you would see the glory of God? She's like, just trust me on this. You're going to see something really cool. Then they believed him. You know how we know they believed him? Because they rolled away the stone. They took away the stone from the place where the dead man was lying. And Jesus lifted up his eyes and said, Father, I thank you that you have heard me, and I know that you always hear me. But because of the people who are standing by, I said this, that they may believe that you sent me. The first things that he says, we can say every time. Okay, right? I thank you that you have heard me, and I know that you always hear me. Do you know that God always hears you? He always hears you. There's never a thing that you can say that he doesn't hear. Now, when he had said these things, he cried out with a loud voice, Lazarus, come forth. And he who had died came out bound hand and foot with grave clothes, and his face was wrapped in cloth. And Jesus said, loose him and let him go. Lazarus, come forth. Get out of the grave. You don't belong there anymore. Jesus has that same message to you. Whatever your name is, come forth. You are no longer dead. I'm calling you to the land of the living. Now, a lot of you aren't wrapped up in grave clothes. Maybe some of you are. You're living like this world. You're acting like this world. This world is dead. You are wearing grave clothes. Come back out of the grave and come into the light. Jesus is calling your name. Come forth. Don't be dead any longer. Be alive. Do you think Lazarus had a decision at that point? Can you imagine him waking up in the grave? Where am I? Can I get 5 more minutes, please? No, he's gonna go he's gonna get out. He's gonna he was hop out because they wrapped his feet together. He's coming out. Come out of the grave. God's called you out. The life that you lived in this world is dead. Live a new one for Christ. Let him lead you in that. Then he says to them, loose him, let him go. You know what that means? Other Christians, come by your brother who is coming to the light and help him learn how to walk. Take the bindings off of him so that he is free to walk. Okay, then many of the Jews, verse 45, the many Jews who had come to Mary and had seen things Jesus did believed him, but some of them went away to the Pharisees and told them the things that Jesus did. Then the chief priests and the Pharisees gathered in the council and said, what should we do? For this man works many signs. I'm sure that's exactly how they sounded. If we let him alone like this, everyone will believe in him, and the Romans will come and take away both our place and nation. The Pharisees didn't mind the Romans. They carved themselves out a little niche where they had power and money and were happy. But if Jesus is causing an uprising, if he's raising people from the dead, the Romans aren't going to like that. We got to keep this quiet. And one of them, Caiaphas, being a high priest of the year, said to them, you know nothing at all. Basically, you imbeciles. Nor do you consider that it's expedient for us that one man should die for the people and not the whole nation should perish. So it's like, instead of all of us perishing, we should just kill Jesus instead. Now this he did not say of his own authority, but being high priest that year, he prophesied. He prophesied. I don't really think of Caiaphas having good prophecies, but he did. He prophesied that Jesus would die for the nation, and not for the nation only, but also that he would gather together in one the children of God who were scattered abroad. He is going to make us one. Then from that day they plotted to put him to death. Therefore Jesus no longer walked openly among the Jews, but he went from there to the country near the wilderness to a city called Ephraim, and there remained there with his disciples. And the Passover of the Jews was near, and many went from the country up to Jerusalem before the Passover to purify themselves. Then they sought Jesus, who spoke among themselves while they stood in the temple. What do you think? That he will not come to the feast? Now both the chief priest and the Pharisees had given the command that if anyone knew where he was, he should report it that they may seize him. They're trying to arrest him. Because Lazarus lives, Jesus must die. That's where they came up. So Jesus is staying away for now. He's waiting for the perfect time. We know that as Palm Sunday. And the people up there at the feast think Jesus is going to show up, because if he shows up, they're going to get him. I was planning on doing the first part of 12, but man, it's just so good. I think we should stop here. I would recommend reading it, though, because then we get to see Mary washing Jesus' feet with her tears and then wiping them with her hair and pouring oil on them. It's a great thing. But come forth. Rise from your own graves and live for Jesus. Let's pray. My Lord Jesus, thank you so much for this time that I get to share your word with your people, Lord. I thank you so much for this opportunity. It is my absolute pleasure to serve you in this capacity. And in any capacity you so desire of me, Jesus. And I know that sometimes I can be a little too Martha. And I thank you for your gentle correction. And I pray, Lord, that I would stop being so much like Martha and be more like Lazarus. What do we know about Lazarus? Just that he came forth. Jesus, you call us from the grave because we are sinners. And because we are sinners, we deserve to die for our sins, Jesus. But because you love us so much, you died on that cross for me, for us. You rose again on the third day, Lord, proving that your love was enough. And now you're calling us out. Come forth. And Lord Jesus, I respond with yes. Yes, I am coming out. I'm hopping with everything I got to get out of there, Jesus, so that I can come be in the light as you are in the light. And I'm asking, is there anybody else in this room that wants to come be in the light with me? That wants to come forth from the grave today? If that's you, I ask that you raise your hand so that I can acknowledge you and I can pray for you. And we can rejoice together. My Lord Jesus, even though we don't see hands tonight, you know our hearts. And I pray that if anyone wants to give their lives to you, that they would pray this prayer with me now. Dear Jesus, I am a sinner. I know I deserve to die for my sins. But you died for me. You took my place. You rose again on the third day, Jesus. And you asked if I would be yours. For whatever reason, Jesus, I rejected you at first, but now I say yes. Yes, Jesus, let me be your child. Please be my God. Let me serve you and be with you forever and ever. I give my life to you now, and I know you will not let me go. I pray this in your holy and precious name. Amen.